Maria, take it off.
Okay, so welcome everybody to our talk, Theming for Distribution, Subtheming Like a Pro. We're going to, I'll introduce us first. I'm Maria Young. I'm a developer at Agile Collective, and I've been working, Agile Collective's been working on LocalGov Drupal for a while now, and I've been working on it specifically in this last beta phase. This is Mark. Say
Hi
hello,
everyone,
Mark.
I'm Mark. I am a director of development at Enertech. I'm a front-end developer, and I've been working with LocalGov Drupal since the beta phase as well. So since about March this year, but not as part of the beta phase itself. I'm working on a kind of a separate scheme of work on modernizing, let's say, the front end, or rewriting the front end template system and CSS and JavaScript and things like that to make it more scalable and sustainable.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk you through, first of all, a very quick introduction into LocalGov Drupal and how it came about, and then what we were looking for in a base theme generally, and then Mark's going to talk through what we did in our base theme, and give us a bit of a demo. So, if we could move on. Yes.
Oh, sorry, no, I couldn't move on. It's moving on now. Okay, we're in business again.
Great. So
LocalGov Drupal. Someone who knew something about computers or websites.
Next time I'll get a professional. LocalGov Drupal is a Drupal distribution for local government, built in collaboration with councils for councils. So I'm assuming most people know a little bit about distributions, but very briefly, it's a package of contributed modules, code, configuration that makes it possible to quickly set up a complex use-specific site in much fewer steps than if you were doing it from scratch. In the UK, local governments is responsible for local services for people and businesses in the local area, things like social care and housing and schools. So this LocalGov Drupal is a Drupal distribution for local councils to quickly build their public-facing websites. So it's got loads of configuration that we know councils need, but it's designed to be more of a starter kit. So they will take it and then develop more for their particular needs. So it came from possibly inspiration, maybe 50% inspiration, maybe 50% frustration. In 2019, Will Callahan moved from, he's probably in the room somewhere, Brighton and Hove to Croydon Council, where he was asked to oversee the build of Croydon's new website. He just spent 12 months doing the same thing for Brighton and Hove, and he couldn't bear to do it all again, or he didn't see the need to do it all again. He convinced the two councils to participate in a code sharing project, which allowed Croydon to get content live within 3 months, whereas it had taken 12 months for Brighton and Hove to do the same. So, you know, this is really common, and we've got, I think, 398 UK councils who are spending thousands of pounds rebuilding their main websites every few years, and their needs are almost identical. So at that point, you know, councils weren't really collaborating on that, so we really saw the gap, you know, the possibility there for something much better. So since then, we got funding originally from Ministry of Housing, Community and Local Government. They've just rebranded to something about levelling up, and they funded 3 phases. So the discovery was seeing whether there was a viable product there, and then Alpha and Beta have been developing features and supporting new councils joining, and developing a new base theme. So we've now got 15 councils collaborating on LocalGov Drupal, with more in the pipeline, and a lot of developers. So the team is developers at councils and suppliers, companies, freelancers, so like Agile Collective and Enertech, who all have a shared interest in open source and building better public assets. So stepping back, like when we got into building, looking at building a base theme, we had to think about what we really needed for a distributions base theme. So we needed to support incoming councils, new councils, to be able to just set up the base installation and it would just work. They'd be able to play with it and see how this new distribution was working. You can move on a slide, Mark. We wanted something that would be a theme that would be really easy to understand and extend. Councils don't have tons of in-house development resource. Some of them have none. So we wanted a front-end theme that would be really easy for developers to pick up and use, whatever their experience. We also had a load of councils who were already using the old base theme. So we needed to make sure we had a sort of easy migration path to move over to the new theme. And we also wanted to keep those original developers involved. It's really easy to get left behind if you're an early adopter of a project, and we didn't want to leave anyone behind. We wanted something that would be easy to maintain going forward, so that we could roll out more improvements and yeah, iterative development, make it better as we go along. And possibly most of all, we wanted a theme that developers were willing or even enthusiastic about using and maintaining. Other things, best practices, of course, Drupal, accessibility, UX. Some councils wanted to take features on their own and install them on their website rather than having the whole LocalGov Drupal distribution. So I had to consider supporting that. And we wanted to allow some flexibility for developers to take the theme in a different direction. And we are at the moment supporting IE11. So that's a thing. Very briefly, the old theme, which was the result of the code sharing project between Croydon and Brighton and Hove, it's sort of a stripped back version of their theme. It was, it was good, but it just didn't do exactly what we needed. It hadn't been designed with this sort of scalable model in mind. So yeah, the main things was it wasn't scalable, had far too many dependencies, and not in line with Drupal best practices. Most of the front end developers got frustrated and went their own way. So we considered reworking it, but decided it would be better to start from scratch. So Mark, what did we do?
I'm glad you asked. First off, we started by creating a working group. So this was to give us kind of an overall framework for what we wanted to do, and we'd have some accountability on decision making and things like that. So I became the lead of the front end working group, and then it was organized by Will Callahan and Finn from Agile Collective and yourself, Maria, and we had a few other people, Dan, Adnan, Andy, I think maybe 8 or so in total. What we wanted to do was improve the best practice in our code and libraries that we're going to use. So that would mean, following Drupal best practices for writing our templates and for how our libraries were structured and for what dependencies we would have, if any. We wanted to then make sure that this would be written in such a way that it would enhance the sustainability of the project, that other councils wouldn't come on board and say, yeah, we like LocalGov Drupal, but the teaming system we have, it's too opinionated towards one particular framework or one particular design system or something like that. And then they'd all end up going off and writing their own front end. So we want to make sure that wouldn't happen. We want to improve the scalability of the front end to make sure that what we build could be used as a base for I think it's 398 councils we have in the UK. And then there's councils, there's no problem, I think, with Irish councils or anyone else using it as well. And then the last point here, it says you would want to encourage that this was the obvious choice for councils, that if LocalGov Drupal is good enough for you as your base for your CMS, well, the LocalGov Drupal base team should be good enough as the base for your front end as well. So to get all this in progress, what we did was we removed all the dependencies that were in the current LocalGov team. So the first one we looked at was the jQuery. So there's in our current team now, there's no jQuery whatsoever. There is some jQuery in some of the modules, and I hope we'll get around to each of those modules and rewrite them in a just vanilla JavaScript. But that was to make sure that you know, any JavaScript framework, if someone wanted to use something else, could be used, and you wouldn't have jQuery getting in the way. Bootstrap got removed as well. I don't have a problem particularly necessarily with Bootstrap or Tailwind or any particular framework, but we wanted to make sure that the base front end wouldn't impose Bootstrap or Tailwind or any other framework like that on every single council across the UK. So across 400 councils, if everyone adopted this. Mostly what Bootstrap is actually being used for was a grid system to allow us to have a 12-column grid system that would have 3 columns for a sidebar and 9 columns for a main content area and things like that. So what we did instead was we wrote our own grid system, but the grid system we wrote was based on the GovUK GDS, Government Design System, I think it's called. So we've got the exact same grid system that they have, except we just changed the names of it to reflect LGD, LocalGov Drupal, instead of GovUK. It's a battle-tested system. It's very well used across all the GovUK design assets, and it's also used in a very slightly modified manner within the NHS design system as well. We looked then at Font Awesome. So we have, I think, only one field in the whole distribution that allows us to have icons as part of the field, but we're loading the whole of Font Awesome just for that one field. So if you actually don't use that particular module, you shouldn't have Font Awesome loading, and certainly shouldn't have 5,000 Font Awesome icons loading when you don't need it. So we looked at the actual icons that we were using in our team, and we got those icons as SVGs from GitHub, and we put them straight into our team with an attribution inside as a parameter inside the SVG itself. And then we inline our SVGs. So now we have nice SVGs that are inlined and load really fast, and we can manipulate them with CSS if we want. So we still have that Font Awesome package in the actual module itself, but I would like to see in the future where we could see exactly what icons we need and add those extra icons into our team. At the moment, we've only got 7 out of the 5,000 or so icons being used. So we can easily up that to 20 or 30 icons and not lose kind of maintainability or scalability. So once we kind of figured out that we're going to try to have a framework-free or dependency-free team, we looked at the templates. So we rewrote pretty much all the templates that were there. What happened was the templates we had, some of them hadn't followed Drupal best practices, or maybe had been written by front-end developers that were very good front-end developers, but not necessarily front-end Drupal developers. And there's always that little bit of a difference in terms of maybe how Drupal does something. So the attributes variable was often missing. You can see here on that screenshot, we've got content attributes. So that's within the content, there's a title attributes variable as well, and there's a general attributes variable. When they're missing, it removes classes sometimes from your templates, and it can remove ARIA attributes and things that would allow something like quick edit module to work. So we rewrote all the templates to make sure that attributes were put back in, that the content variable itself got rendered rather than just rendering content dot, would say, field image or content dot field tags or something, because without the content variable itself getting fully rendered, cache tags don't bubble up properly, or if you add a new field to your content type, that will never get rendered on the page until it gets added into the template. So we rewrote our team in such a way that the content variable would get rendered and any new fields would be at least visible, even if they didn't look exactly like you might want them to. At least they were visible on the page for users. And then we rewrote all the CSS, or we gave all of our HTML element CSS classes based on block element modifier, so BEM class names, and that allows us then to very easily target specific components. And if we change something in the header, we don't see the table. Sorry, not the table. I was thinking of a CSS joke. Someone, piece of CSS walks into a bar and there's something in a table and another bar flips over. But so if you change something in the header, the footer doesn't end up changing and things like that. So we look then at accessibility and translation. So we want to make sure that our base theme is as accessible as possible. Drupal itself has WCAG 2.1 AA accessibility standard gates that everything must pass through. So as much of any accessibility issues that we found, we fixed. We didn't have a huge amount in terms of contrast and things like that, because that had been baked into the original team, and there was a lot of consideration on that. But we did have a few with maybe adding some ARIA attributes for what button that was controlling the expanding or collapsing of a menu and things like that. We added our grid classes for layout. I've kind of explained that already, where we just wrote our own grid system. And then I think it was very interesting coming at this project from an Irish perspective, that almost all of the strings inside our templates weren't translatable, which is understandable when the templates are written by people for UK councils, where the content may not be translatable. It might just be in one language. But coming from an Irish perspective, all of our councils make our content available in English and Irish. So I kind of noticed that was kind of one of the things that would stand out to me straight away. And it's interesting in an open source project that, when you bring these extra perspectives into it, you get a much better product. So we made sure then all the strings that are in all our templates are all translatable and can be maintained then by editors. And that will allow this base theme to be used if any Irish council decide to adopt this, or even within UK, if any Scottish or Welsh or Northern Irish councils decide to adopt LocalGov Drupal as their CMS. So we rewrote all the CSS. We have no dependencies whatsoever. So we're not imposing anything on any council. We have just got vanilla CSS. There's no post CSS. There's no Sass. We do have a package JSON file, but the only thing that package JSON file does is that it grabs the style int file from Drupal core, and it pops that into our own theme, and then it formats our CSS so it'll follow the Drupal coding standards for the order of items and space between classes and the open curly brace and things like that. So it's only a formatting tool. If it's not used, the CSS will still work exactly as you'd expect. We do have then, you can see in the screenshot on the right hand side, boxlinks.css, boxlinks.ie11.css, breadcrumbs.css, breadcrumbs.ie11.css. So what we did was we wrote all the CSS we wanted in our CSS files, and then any overrides we need where we'd use variables or things that maybe wouldn't be so supported in IE11, we have a custom IE11 file for each of those. And what that's going to mean is that eventually when we stop supporting IE11, very, very soon, hopefully, we can just delete all those IE11 files and delete the library's definition that calls those in as well. When it came to documentation, we wanted to make sure that our team was well documented, but often we find, if you document something in a docs repo, maybe someone doesn't even know that docs repo exists, so wouldn't go there to find the information, or maybe something gets updated in the team and the person who updated it didn't realize that the docs need to be updated somewhere else. So instead, what we're trying to do is keep all our documentation inline, and we're trying to write it fairly extensively. So you can see here, this is the html.twig file, and I got a block in this called extra head items. So what this is that your subtheme can use html.twig, but if it wants a few extra things in the head, such as a Google font or something like that, you can just use this small one block here, and we've added nice documentation for exactly how that could be used, and with the sample here for Google fonts. And the same is true. You might want to use that for if you had a PWA, PWA, progressive web app or something, and you need to change the MS tile color, which might default to white, and you want it to be green or something for your website. And we've got that kind of stuff actually built in, not PWA, but that multiple favicon kind of approach. So this kind of inline documentation helps us to explain how that's going to happen. And it's the same on our page.html.twig, and where we import icons and things. All that documentation is inline. So when you have an issue with anything in our template, hopefully it'll be explained at the point of where the issue is found. We created CSS variables for nearly everything. I'm going to say nearly everything because there's a few things now when I look back on the team that we could probably have even more CSS variables for. But what we've done is that since everything has a variable, our subthemes, for the most part, can just be one CSS file that changes what those variable properties are. So if you look at the screen screenshot on the left, you see we've got one called color accent, and that's the purpley color 652C95. What we do is, rather than say the header background is color accent, rather than actually going to dot header and then saying background color, color accent, we said then dot header background color dash dash header background color. And then we set header background color to equal our accent color. So it means then that in your subtheme, all you need to do is redeclare what the variables, what you want them to be. But then you further that you can actually redeclare what an instance of a variable is. So in the specific case of the header background color or the breadcrumbs separator, I think is a good one. So we've got the two little small arrows. I'm not sure what you call those. But some other team might want to use a / as your breadcrumb separator. So that itself is also a CSS variable. Then we looked at the idea of team settings, because what we decided was that some council might say, yep, the template you have here is perfect. This HTML is exactly the HTML that we want to use. But for whatever reason, we don't want to use your CSS or we don't want to use your JavaScript. So we created two team settings that allows any subteam of the LocalGov base team to switch off the CSS and switch off the JavaScript, or switch off both if they want, and rewrite their own JavaScript and maintain just their own CSS for it. And I think this approach actually will be a very interesting approach in a further slide when we look at what we can do in the future with this. So creating a subteam script. This was to make sure that someone doesn't try to create a subteam and then get a little bit stuck and have to start redoing things, or wondering why, oh, I forgot I need to also copy this file, and then realize, oh, there's another file I need to get, and get frustrated. So what we did is we created a bash script. Now, I think it's specifically bash. I think I tried to use it with ZSH and it wouldn't work. This isn't my forte, this particular section. So I'm happy enough that this works good enough for us currently. If we can improve it, that would be great. And what it does is, you can see on the instructions, it creates the subtheme folder. It copies the logo.svg file. It copies a info.yaml file, libraries file, creates the library for the CSS overrides, and it creates the HTML.twig file and things that basically everything to get you going. So everyone will start from the exact same position with a subtheme, rather than people trying to interpret themselves what way this subtheme should be created. And it's just default Drupal kind of best practice of how it's created, but just we want to make sure that journey is as easy for everybody. So here's a demo of creating a subtheme. Now, I'm not sure exactly how this is going to go, because I need to stop sharing my slides and start sharing code editor. So hopefully the live demo will go as well as live demos always go. So I'm going to escape from this. I'm going to look at this. So this is the sub team here this is the general team. This is LocalGov base. Now it's ugly, but it's not. Well, I won't say deliberately ugly, but we've built it in such a way that it's an additive team. So we didn't want to add in anything like a Google font to make it look really pretty with a Google font, if every single website's going to end up overriding that Google font. So what we try to do is give it as little as possible, and when it has as little as possible to make it a really strong core functioning team, then any other council needs would be adding to this rather than trying to overwrite what we did. So the font here, that's a sans serif font. That's just a sans serif font, and the font here, that's a serif font, just a serif font. On your computer, it might look different to what it looks like on mine. And then we can set the fonts and things ourselves specifically on a per website basis. So we've got this one here with the purple background, and you can see here that it's the purple accent color getting added in different places. So what I can do is I'm going to just change the theme that's being used here now, just to show you. We've also created a sub-theme, and it's on our demo website here. You can see that looks like this, which is much nicer and has better fonts, and it has little borders on the top of these kind of items. So I'm going to install that. That's called Scarfolk, and this is going to become the default theme that will be enabled when you enable this distribution. So you'll have LocalGov base as the base theme, and then Scarfolk Council uses LocalGov base as its base. So I'm going to set this one as a default now. Come back and refresh this page. So this should go to that kind of bluey color, and that looks good. Now to look at this Scarfolk theme, all this theme is in effect is LocalGov web themes. That's in, so it's in contrib, Scarfolk. So these are the general files that got created by the script. I'll run through the script in a second, but so to just show you, there's a scarfolk.info.yaml, scarfolk.libraries.yaml, and scarfolk.theme. But the theme itself, the only thing we've actually changed in this theme is we've got a CSS file called variables.css, and I changed the accent color to be that blue. I added one new color in here, and I changed the the primary font to be Open Sans and the secondary font to be Mulish. And then we applied some variables. So you can see here, breadcrumbs divider. I said the breadcrumbs I wanted to be 2 forward slashes instead of the, I'm not sure how you do that character, the 2 little arrows that it currently is. And the breadcrumbs background color I changed to this all color. So that's it. That's whatever that is, maybe 10 lines of just setting CSS variables. And then I created an overrides.css file just for some small changes. And that was just to give us different spacing in some areas, or change the type of border that we see on the top of some things, or on the left of, say, a block quote. And that's what 37 lines of CSS. So you're looking at under 50 lines of CSS gave us this theme here. So if we then want to run the script, excuse me, to run the script to create a new theme. So I'm inside my localgov/localgov repo here. So I'm going to cd to web. Oh no, I need to log in. Okay, so I should cd to web themes contrib localgov base. And you can see down here, then we've got this scripts directory here. So inside scripts, there's let's see what's inside it. There's a file here called create subtheme.sh, and then there's a directory that has the subtheme items that we need. So it will grab things from the subtheme items folder, and it's going to rename them to whatever we need to rename for ourselves. And it's going to use this file, this create subtheme.sh file to do so. So bash scripts create subtheme.sh, and I'll press enter. So it says this script creates the basic foundations of a LocalGov base subtheme. Enter the full name for your team. For example, Scarfolk Council Team. So I'm going to call this DrupalCon 2021. And this is the human readable name of the team, so it can have spaces and capital letters and things like that. After we do that, then we're asked to enter the machine name for our team. So this would be lowercase letters only and underscores for spaces. So we'll go with DrupalCon 2021 and enter. And that's it. So that's created the subtheme for us now. So if we have a look at the folders, the folder for that, we should see inside our teams custom DrupalCon 2021.info.yaml. And that says now that LocalGov base will be the base theme. And it's got a library called DrupalCon 2021/variables. And then it reprints the regions to make sure that then when we enable this theme, blocks will get positioned in the same regions that they currently are in from the base distribution itself. The libraries itself, then we've got a library called variables, which just has a variables.css file, and then we've got a .theme file. This is just empty. They're available for if we need to add any template, theme override, or pre-processed functions and things like that. And it copies over the SVG, which is a generic logo for ourselves. The templates has html.html.twig, so that just extends the LocalGov base version of that, and it overrides the extra head items to add in whatever you want to add in. So this is an example of where we might add in. Let me grab here from the Scarfolk one. Here you can see we have Google fonts added to it. So if you want to have custom Google fonts in here, you can put them here and change then from Open Sans to something like Roboto or whatever family you want. And Mulish could be changed to, again, whatever it is. I'll remove them just for now. And that's it. That's the whole of the sub theme. We've got our, sorry, I'm in the wrong directory here. CSS variables file with lots of inline documentation for how things will work for us. And we've changed the accent color here to green. Now this is very ugly, but I just want to do this to make sure that we can actually see that a change is taking effect. So when we come back to our Drupal website and refresh our appearance page, we should now in our disabled section here have a new theme called DrupalCon 2021. Now to install this, excuse me, and set this as default, we've got to do this in 2 steps. If we click install and set as default, for some reason, the blocks don't get positioned in the correct regions. I'm not sure exactly why that is yet. So instead, if we just click on install to make the theme available, and after we've done that, we can set it as default here, then it should work. Now, this is the part that live demos can go crazy on. So let's see if it works. So this should now become a green themed site. It has. And you can see that it's got a new font. So this is using the Oswald font that we have imported here via CSS. So we probably shouldn't do that. This should be done within the HTML.twig file. So we've got some notes up here saying where you should load it, but this is just another example of how you can load it. And we've changed our font secondary here to equal Oswald. So this now it means we've got a site that's the same as our base site, except it's just got a different color in it, but everything else is the same. So what we could do is we might decide that, hey, I actually quite like the Scarfolk theme, this one, but I want the fonts and things from this one and colors. So we can very easily then come back to our DrupalCon 2021 theme, come to our info.yaml file, and we'll change LocalGov base being our, LocalGov base being our base theme. Oh. And we'll change LocalGov Scarfolk to our base theme. And then we can clear the cache. And refresh this page. Now what we have is we can see that you can start seeing the inheritance starting to pay off, and how this can be scalable for accounts. And now we've got our LocalGov base team actually powering almost all the functionality. Then we've got the general overrides from our LocalGov Scarfolk team, giving us spacing around these what are these called? These alerts, and giving us the white border around this page title here, and the borders at the top of this. But then you've got the actual theme we just created a second ago, the DrupalCon 2021 theme, saying that I want to look like Scarfolk, except I want to have green as my color, and I want to have Oswald as my font. And that is it actually for that. After that, if you want to override a template, create a new template and override what you need to override. If you want to override some CSS, you can just, like any team, create your libraries and do so. But you should be able to get a long way by looking at the LocalGov base CSS base variables, a CSS file, and seeing, aha, here are the different things I can override. So I don't need to create these myself. So my widths, my spaces, my colors, my grays, and then font sizes, borders. And then what we do is we just apply all those. So our grid spacing column becomes a variable that's reached above, and breadcrumbs becomes a different variable that's reached above. So you can go through all these variables, see which ones you need to override, and create most of your team, we hope, just by a simple CSS overrides file. That's it. So this theme here is 3 lines of CSS. Now let's look at the presentation again. Actually, I think we might be finished. So we run the script, we did that. We enable the team, we did that. We edit the variables.css file, so we've shown how that works. And then we take questions. Maria, do you have any questions? Or does anyone have any questions for us?
We do have some questions. We have some chat questions in the Q&A. So we start with a really a broad, specific one from Finley Lewis.
Should I keep sharing my screen here, or will we go back to our cameras?
We could show them our faces, I suppose.
Yeah, we're pretty people. So let's turn. Oops, on that. Stop sharing.
So Finn's asking us why we're supporting IE11, which is a very good question coming from him.
It is. We are supporting IE 11 as far as I know, because Drupal is supporting IE 11 currently. If Drupal doesn't, then we may not. But I think there's also something about UK councils supporting IE 11, and
yeah,
we're
but
into that.
in GovUK's service manual at the moment, they're still supporting IE 11 up until we think maybe next year. Early next year, we think. So it's also taking a lead from gov.uk. I'll just stick a link to that in the Q&A if anyone wants to read it. So Marco is asking us about starter kit themes instead of subtheming, and I think it's linked to an issue where that discussion is happening. So Drupal core seems to suggest starter kit themes instead of subtheming, likely to avoid the burden of not being able to change markup. How do you balance that, when to subtheme versus when to copy? Do you have any thoughts about that, Mark?
I don't. One thing on like a starter kit theme is great if you want to have a very individual website. So each of our clients, we have our own starter kit theme that we use, and it takes its own direction after that. I think when we're using a distribution, it's a little bit different, because we want something that can be used across 400 councils. And we know at the moment that maybe 20 councils using this, but there may be other councils that have just downloaded the LocalGov Drupal and are using it themselves, and they haven't told us. There could be a council in France that's using it for some reason, and we wouldn't know. So we do want to make sure that we maintain a base team. If anyone wants to use their base their sub team of our base team as a starter kit, that's no problem, because of the way it's written, because everything is additive. They can just copy the templates and copy the CSS files and off to go. The idea of not being able to change markup, that's something we have done in terms of moving from the LocalGov theme to what we call LocalGov base. So from the old base theme to the new one. We have changed that a bit. It was a bit easier, I guess, for us just now, because there was only 4 or 5 councils currently using the team at that time, so we could alert them to what was happening and then help them to transition from one to the other. That might become a larger issue, in 6 months or in a year's time. But I guess our team will maintain its markup in its way, and then if somebody needs to override that, I guess it's easier for them to override it, for someone using the sub teams to override it if they wish, than for us. So yeah, we'll have to be cognizant of that.
So another question from Nicholas. If the base theme is not to be altered, why not use a CSS pre or post processor and commit the generated CSS? The experience for subtheming would be the same.
It would, but the barrier to entry for someone to join us or create a pull request or whatever would be slightly increased. It's not a huge increase, but what we have now means that if you know CSS, you can join us. You don't need any build tools whatsoever, and I think that should be a fairly welcoming proposition for anyone that comes to us.
Finn's asking about what about a dev council with no dev resource at all? Could we support a point and click approach to overriding styles? I feel like maybe you should share that slide that we dropped from the end of our presentation.
Yeah, we had a slide actually in yesterday. We said, well, let's remove that because we haven't talked about this at the working group kind of level. But let's mention it now. So one thing I would love to do in the future would be that the team settings, actually, when I said earlier on, this would be good for a slide I'll show later. I didn't realize we had removed it. The team settings, actually, we didn't remove it. It's another slide. Oh no, it is gone. You must have removed it. Ruined my presentation, Maria.
I think it's just at the end.
But what we were thinking of doing was that editors could put in sizes and things into team settings. So we've got a variable called -- spacing, and that's set to 1 rem at the moment. That an editor could set that to 1.5 rems or 26 pixels or whatever they want. We've got a variable for -- breadcrumb separator that we saw, which is the 2 little angly things. an editor could put in a plus symbol in there or a / or whatever they wanted. And then we would have a point and click subtheme system that all of that is editor maintainable. Like I said, we haven't discussed this that's kind of an ambition of mine for it, but we haven't discussed that at a working group level yet. So I don't want to say that's what's going to happen. It's kind of like the color module, I guess, in Drupal. You know, that now with CSS variables, color module becomes something that could be amazing and was a bit before its time. So we'd be developing some sort of a color module on steroids type approach to how this could work.
Thanks. So that is all the questions we have in the chat. Does anybody else want to?
There was one just mentioned there from Sasha Eggenberger, who's the developer of the Gin team, just on installing the theme and the blocks not getting positioned properly. So thanks very much for your comment on that, Esha. We'll look into that in the config/optional directory. Okay. Well, unless let's just give people a couple of minute just to see if they want to ask anything else. Otherwise, we can go on to the next thing. Thank you very much, Mark. I very much enjoyed that. Thank you very much, Maria.
Where can we download presentation and recordings? Question. I believe they will be available in the replay tab quite quickly for people who've got, you know, who are here. And then I think they will be up on YouTube soon, usually in a couple of weeks.
Yep. And I guess there's a link then to the Subtheming Like a Pro Google Doc. I suppose we should share that. I'll pop that into the chat here now.
Great.
Cool. I think we're done.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.